We are the Spice Girls, a group composed by Cristina Aroca, Aitana Chafer, María Guillem, Elena Calabuig, and Polina Kopylova. We are going to talk about slang and social varieties.
Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about slang and social varieties, and I would like to begin with the definition of the word slang. Slang is a group of linguistic features whose purpose is to make human speech simpler and to distinguish people between some different social classes or classes according to their age, to their education, nationality, etc. Sometimes the words are being used only in their specific area to be understood by variety of people and even become standard. The origins of slang are usually found by the desire of those members of a particular group or subculture to communicate freely with each other according to their common sense of justice, views, education, etc. Also, slang was invented to easily distinguish between these specific classes. Frequently, slang may contain vulgar words full of hostility and violence. Even though slang has positive sides as shortened forms of the words which are easier to be pronounced or to be understood. But it builds frontiers between people with different values and habits and patterns of communication. The thing that even the regional accents initially were considered to be slang, but with the flow of the time the things changed. From the 17th century, the set of strange words appeared in criminal classes, then it spread even in the literature, poems, and songs. An impulse to develop the slang culture in 19th century became such events as abolitionist movement in America and Australia and civil war in America in 1861. The themes on the base of which the slang developed were the topics usually forbidden to discuss, like sexuality, drugs, crime, etc. There are three different concepts which people tend to confuse. These are slang, argot, and jargon. So, what's the difference between them? Jargon are words used by certain groups or groups which share common interests. The meaning of the words is usually incomprehensible for other people except the members of these communities. The vocabulary is distinguished by its informal nature. While the term slang means the spoken version of English language, which is not considered to be the norm nor literal language. So some scientists believe that jargon and slang are like synonyms, but some scientists tend to distinguish them and think that these are different concepts. And argot are rude words, and argot has nothing in common with the previous two words, so that's something totally different. These words educated people don't use in society. This is a special vocabulary which is used by people of lower social status. And it's very important to understand that slang is the simplest way to define something or to explain something. So it is not considered to be offensive nor rude, and so we can use slang in the society. We can be understood. So maybe this point is what distinguishes slang from jargon, because jargon is something very special to some communities which communicate with each other, and sometimes the words we are accustomed to hear mean totally different things from what we are accustomed to understand by this. As it was said, It's known that slang mostly has its origins in America, after the abolitionist movement, after the Civil War, and so on. But also there are some varieties which had spread from the other places of English world. For example, Cockney rhyming slang. Traditional Cockney rhyming slang is based on taking the words compatible and putting them together, forming rhyme. Also, they are compatible just logically. As we can see in the example, plates of meat can mean feet, dog and bone, phone, north and south, mouth, and so on. It's necessary to mention that traditional Cockney slang variety is a variety of English language spoken between working class Londoners. Mm, That's very strange, but this type of slang is just a shared code used by people in order not to be understood by others. There is no place to logic, just rhyme. The only logical thing is that the words forming the another word are logically compatible, like plates of meat. So we can literally understand and imagine plates full of meat, but they mean totally different things. The other type of slang is widespread everywhere in the world, and it's called internet slang. We are accustomed to use it in our everyday life, so everyone can understand the examples given. Instead of you, we use, for example, the letter U. Instead of R, we use like the word, just the letter R. Mm, Internet slang loves using acronyms. These are like phrases shortened and written just by their first letters, like LOL, which means laughing out loud, or IMHO, for in my humble opinion. And between internet slang, we also can distinguish some phrasal verbs like crash, to fall asleep quickly, or pig out, to eat a lot. And also emoticons, which are called smiles, are considered to be slang too. And here you have the link with the video which can help you to understand more what is slang compared to Spanish language.
I am going to explain social varieties in UK. First of all, we have recite pronunciation. When we think of recite pronunciation, we think of an accent that doesn't change, whereas other accents can be studied. There are many differences between the many groups who speak RP. Everybody has a different opinion. Recite pronunciation has changed over time. Very few persons in Britain have an RP accent. It is the accent used by the royal family, members of the nobility, the upper classes, and by the BBC. Therefore, it became the most important. Each RP speaker speaks slightly different from any other. The RP accent has a pretensions of great standing and power, as well as honor and arrogance. Here we have some examples of the vowels or the consonants in the recite pronunciation. Secondly, we have the Cockney accent. In the East End of London is where Cockney is spoken. It's spoken by the London working class. It's the most famous accent in England. For centuries, it has been a disgrace even though it's of great pride for those who speak it. It's famous for its rhymes and humor, and its backward speaking, or say the other way around. It's not very nice to hear, as it distorts English, making it unintelligible for foreigners. Some examples of this accent are: the H is often dropped at the beginning of the words. The TH sound is often replaced by an F sound, like in thing, it's thing. It's not uncommon for the G not to be uttered at the end of the words. Here we have some examples of the vowels of Cockney and some Examples of cooking rhyme slang.
Native speakers speak differently depending on the context, education, where they live, age, gender, or social class, among others. Some features of this accent are the use of intrusive R, which means that they pronounce an R in places where there is no R to prevent consecutive vowel sounds. Another fact is the th fronting. The pronunciation of the th is often pronounced as e th and v instead of a th or th. For example, mouth as mouth and those as those, and also the h dropping. In non-standard dialects of English, we can focus on three features. The first one, multiple negations. This fact comes from the 18th century, and as it could be a double or triple negation, it is considered illogically. For example, she hasn't got no money to buy new clothes. Another two non-standard uses of language that comes also from the 18th century is the h-dropping and h-adding. H-dropping consists in eliminating the initial h of a word when speaking. On the contrary, h-adding consists in adding an initial h on a word that doesn't have it. Thinking is the correct way of speaking and writing it. In lower socioeconomic groups, people tend to pronounce ng at the end of a word as n. For example, doing as doing. And sometimes in written English, they write it as n, like doing. A feature of young people's accent is T-glottaling. It consisted of substituting a glottal stop of a T for a T sound between vowels. This fact isn't well seen in some circles. For example, little.
Hello, my name is Maria and I'm going to talk about USA. First, speech varieties and then language variation. So, speech varieties that distinguish people from different social classes or ethnic groups, and also in the United States, thousands of cities, towns, and groups have their own varieties of dialects. First, we will focus on what is Standard American English and what is Vernacular English. Standard English, the official educated variety of English spoken by the elite on the social media or at classes. But there is a contradiction because American heritage suggests that there's no single universally accepted standard for how to speak or write American English. Even so, scholar systems, professional communicators, and business all have standards, and not surprisingly, the rules, at least for grammar, do not vary from place to place. However, some people understand by the standard that is then an accented variety. I mean, accent reduction. Standard American English pronunciation is different from some region and the people. It depends on the circumstance of the different zones of the United States. And finally, I will talk about vernacular English, that varieties that contain socially noticeable negatively value dialect structures spoken by socially lower groups. Vernacular is the common dialect that people talk every day in her or his life, and is the opposite that you used to see in formal writing. Vernacular is, as standard English, also different from region to region. We have an example that is very common in some zones of America, that the term "aiol" that people usually use.
Hi, I'm Elena and I'm going to talk about language variation in the USA. The factors of the language variation are divided in external and internal. In external variation, the factors are gender. It's a clear fact that appears easily and it can have variations through the evolution of every man and woman. It's common that the women used to use more standard language variation and that men use more non-standard language variation than women, both in the same circumstances, class and age. Socioeconomic class. When the socioeconomic class is higher, it is more likely to use standard forms in all styles of speech. The less socioeconomic status, it is more probable to use lower standards form in any kind of speech. Education is another factor of the external language variation. Ethnicity is a variety that can be probably used by the people of ethnic minorities with the function of discerning themselves among the society and their variations. The internal factors are pronunciation and structural factors, for example, how a sentence is structured. Now I'm going to give some examples of language variation in America. In America, the most common language variation are African American English, White Southern Vernacular English, and Puerto Rican English.